When people think about becoming a correctional officer, they usually focus on one question. Can I really handle this job? But that's not the question that really determines what happens next. The real question is, do you understand what system you're entering and how that system works? Because becoming a correctional officer isn't just like taking any other job. It's stepping into one of the most system-heavy environments in government, and what you understand on day one matters more than most people realize. Today, I'm going to talk about 5 things that you should realize on your first day in your new career as a corrections officer. Now, this isn't a video telling you to become a corrections officer because this job is definitely not for everyone. It's also not another video telling you the same basic stuff such as how to deal with inmates, how to properly wear your gear, how to respond to different kind of situations, or any other basics like that. This video is about understanding the systems so that you can go on to have a successful government career, whether it's in the correctional facility or if you move on. My name is Brian, and I have spent time behind the walls. I learned a lot from it, and I leveraged a very successful government career out of it. If you might be considering a career as a corrections officer and you want to learn how to leverage your time into a stable government career, go ahead and give me a subscribe and let's get into this one. So again, this job isn't for everyone, but if you can handle it, it can be one of the strongest entry points into a solid, stable government career, whether you choose to stay behind the walls or go out the front door into something else. So this is a list of what this role actually represents, what day one teaches you, and why some people build leverage from this role and others just feel stuck. So number one, day one as a CO is very procedural and about personality. It's not just about dramatics. Day one as a correctional officer usually isn't that intense. It's a lot of procedure and personality. While anything can happen on any given day, not every day inside of a correctional facility is going to look like either Shawshank Redemption or one of those documentary shows where they're following COs in and out of fights and riots and other disturbances with the inmates. Instead, you're going to find on day one that you will be introduced to things like policies, post orders, chain of command, accountability structures, and your coworkers. Very quickly, you will learn that this job runs both on process and personality. And while policy and procedure are super important, I'm not going to try to downplay personality because it will have a major effect on your new job. Not only do different inmates have different personalities, but your coworkers will too. While everyone is ultimately working toward the same goal of keeping everything smooth and safe for the shift and going home at the end of the night, different experienced COs will run things differently. Some will run things very firm and by the book, while others might let little things slide and take a path of least resistance style. It really depends on the type of unit that you're in and the personality of the people that you're working with. And now, when you're just starting out, you might find sort of a bit of like a wall of distrust that's already built up between you and your coworkers. The thing is, they don't know you. They don't know how you operate. They don't know if you're going to fold under pressure. They don't know if you're going to make things harder or easier for them in this job. So don't be surprised if it takes a little bit of time for them to warm up to you, so to speak. But personalities aside, here's where a lot of people get disoriented as they go after starting in this career. They come in expecting this intensity. What they get instead is structure. Lots of policies, lots of procedures. Some units are fine-tuned down to every step you take, every key you turn, and every button you push. And that structure is the point because correctional facilities rely on it heavily. Now, number 2 is a big thing for your career. Whether people realize it or not, the CO role is training skills that entire government systems deeply value. Following procedure under pressure, accurate documentation, following chain of custody, operating in high liability environments, and making decisions that are going to be up for review later. This isn't accidental, and it's not just happenstance. Correctional facilities are risk-heavy systems. Even small mistakes matter. Paperwork matters. Process matters. That's why CO experience carries weight inside government, even if it doesn't always look impressive from the outside. If you watch videos or listen to people who have been in this career for a while, you will hear a lot about success being based on your ability to handle the stresses of the job, deal with inmates, and avoid being manipulated. While all these are true and really important, what often gets missed is long-term career success and what it takes if you want to be able to move up or move within the correctional or another government system. Here's the thing, some people thrive as correctional officers, but it's not for everyone as a long-term solution. I've worked with people who have had successful 20+ years career behind the walls in a tower or out on the perimeter, and they never had any desire to move on, move up, or anything else. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But about half the correctional facilities in the United States report an almost 40% turnover rate within the first year and 50% within 5 years, which means that the odds of many people not sticking this out as a full career are pretty high. So what you take from your time in the job is going to matter a lot, even if you don't decide to make a full career out of it behind the walls. If you're able to adapt to those structures and processes I talked about, you will learn valuable skills that can add to your resume and make you an exceptional candidate for other government roles. And this matters a lot because as a CO, you're already in the government system. Say you work at a state prison in the Department of Corrections and you spend maybe 1 or 2 years there. You will have built up a little bit of seniority, some paid leave balances, retirement time, and everything that goes along with the job and those benefits. Say after those couple years, you're tired of dealing with inmates, you're tired of mandatory overtime, those long, slow night shifts, and you decide you want to move over to another state agency or another role within the Department of Corrections. In many states, all those balances that you've built up, all that retirement time and paid time off, those are going to carry along with you to the next government role. So instead of pressing like the great reset button like you might do in the private sector, you will almost be working as if you had never left. Now, at number 3, not every CO who makes a career out of this job is stuck, but many are. I've talked to COs who I've worked with who have made comments like, I've already put in the time and just riding it out, or what else am I really going to do? Most people misunderstand why COs get stuck. It's not because the job has no exit paths, it's because they treat it like a dead end instead of a system entry point. They only focus on things like the post, the shift, the day-to-day stress, the bid system, things like that are all internal to that role. What they don't focus on are some of the external factors, such as how visibility works, how internal credibility builds, how documentation follows you, how lateral movements actually happen in government. That time alone doesn't cause mobility, understanding the system does. So one of the people I helped out was in a very similar situation. He had worked in a prison for years, moved around to some different roles in the prison, and just felt like, what else is he really going to do after all this time? He was getting burned out, but he didn't really want to give up his time and experience. It took some time in working with him, but we were ultimately able to identify another role that was still within the Department of Corrections, but it was an administrative role that had stable hours, more flexibility in the work, and provided him a lot more of a balance in his life. He ultimately put in for the spot, we leveraged his experience with working with correctional systems, and he got the role. Today, he has progressed into managing the entire unit. He has a hybrid work schedule so he can work from home at times, and he is really thriving in this new career. So here's the thing that almost nobody tells you on day one of like your correction officer academy. Being a correction officer isn't just about housing units or counting inmates. Inside government systems, correctional experience quietly feeds into way more career paths than people realize. I'm talking about roles like investigations, compliance, audits, training, regulatory affairs, and other administrative or oversight units. But no, this doesn't happen automatically. Just putting in the time is not going to magically move you forward. What does matter is how the system evaluates you. Government agencies don't promote based on who has survived the hardest shifts or who's burned out the most or who's just put in the most hours. They promote or laterally hire you based on how you document, how you communicate, how you follow policy, and how well you understand the rules that govern the system. And that's the part most people miss. As a CO, you're exposed to internal investigations, incident reporting, use of force reviews, policy interpretation, chain of command, decision-making. There's so many things. It's the same skill set that is used in other roles such as internal affairs, inspector general offices, compliance divisions, and training departments. The difference is those roles are evaluated on paper performance, not physical stress. This is where the job changes. For some people, being a CO stays just a job or an endpoint. For others, it becomes a leverage. People learn how they're being scored, their reports, their consistency, their professionalism, their ability to explain why they acted, not just what they did. They stop thinking like line staff only and start thinking like the people who will review the staff. That's when doors start opening. Now, I'll keep this part short because this video isn't about me and my personal experience. I spent time as a correctional officer in a couple of facilities. Later on, I moved into an investigative role, and then I moved to an administrative unit within the Department of Corrections, and then ultimately moved out of corrections altogether into other government roles. And it's not because the job just magically led me there, but because I learned early what the system rewarded. That path exists for others too, just like the CO I told you about earlier. But it only really happens if you understand what you're stepping into. Ultimately, working at a prison and a jail wasn't the career path for me. It is for some and a lot, but for me and for those other 50% of turnover people, it's just not for us. But I did make sure that my time in this role was not wasted. I leveraged my experience to move forward, and that's something anyone else can do too. So wrapping up, you'll hear this a lot, and I'll reiterate it. Becoming a correctional officer isn't for everyone. If you need speed, flexibility, or like creative autonomy, this system is going to frustrate you. But if you value stability, defined roles, defined authority, long-term mobility inside government, then this role isn't a trap. It is a great foundation for a long-term career. Again, becoming a correctional officer isn't just about whether you can handle the job. It's about whether you understand the system that you're entering and what that system makes possible. Day one doesn't decide your future, but how you interpret day one does. If you want more honest breakdowns of government careers and the systems that they work in, go ahead and give me a subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.